Hello and welcome to this first exploring session looking at the Misfortunes of Arthur by quite a few people, which we will itemize in greater detail anon. It is a production from Gray's Inn and is, as I say, produced by a fair number of hands, which if you've been following since last week when we were looking at a similar kind of text in structure with Tancred and Gismunda, there is a certain familiarity of theme and idea that may cross over to this and may be completely different. We're about to find out how it's all going to go as we go from Act 1 through to the beginning of Act 2. Like many of these inns at court plays, there are going to be a lot of long speeches. Just accept that now. That is what happens. This is how they exist. Yes, digging into those and looking for the possibilities and staging potential of this material. We have this wonderful room here in the darkness, waiting, reading Guenevera, and chorus number 1 is.
Hi, I'm Eric. I shall try not to talk about heavy metal because that's what I'm editing right now.
Reading the introduction, Fronia, Mordred, and chorus number 2, please, is...
Liza Graham. I'm in London, doing stuff.
It's a good system. Reading Gorlois, Conan, and chorus number 3 is...
Hi, Rachael. Currently snowed in New Jersey.
But desperately digging their way out. And reading Gentleman Angharat, chorus number 4, and Nuntius is...
Hi, I'm David. I'm in London with no snow.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton, and I'm primarily covered in mud, really. It's very muddy where we are. It keeps raining. It's carnage. The number of towels we're using to wipe down the dog, it's just piling up. We just don't have enough towel turnaround rate for the amount of mud that is making its way into our house. That's a problem that has nothing to do with this play whatsoever, but I thought I'd vent for a moment. We are, I say, reading the Misfortunes of Arthur, Uther Pendragon's son, reduced into tragical notes by Thomas Hughes, one of the Society of Gray's Inn, and here set down as it passed from under his hands, and as it was presented, excepting certain words and lines where some of the actors either helped their memories by brief omissions or fitted their acting by some alteration, with a note at the end of such speeches as were penned by others, in lieu of some of these hereafter following. So no bitterness in that introductory note at all. No sense of grievance being adjusted, possibly. So we're going to go into the introduction of the text. We're going to skip the argument for the moment. We may look at the argument later in the week, but we have this interesting introduction moment. So this is an introduction penned by Nicholas Trott, gentleman, one of the Society of Gray's Inn, which was pronounced in manner following, vis-a-vis 3 muses came on the stage apparelled accordingly. Bringing 5 gentlemen students with them, attired in their usual garments, whom one of the muses presented to her majesty as captives, the cause whereof she delivered by speech as followeth. And I'll ask Liza to read this speech.
Of conquest, gracious queen, the signs and fruits, achieved 'gainst such as wrongfully withheld the service by choice wits to muses due, in humblest wise these captives we present. And lest your highness might suspect the gift as spoil of war that justice might impeach, hear and discern how just our quarrel was, avouched as you see by good success. A dame there is, whom men Astrea term, she that pronounceth oracles of laws, whom to prepare fit servants for her train, as by commission, takes up flowering wits, whom first she schooleth to forget and scorn the noble skills of language and of arts, the wisdom which discoursive stories teach, the ornaments which various knowledge yields. But poesy she hath in most disdain, and marshals it next folly's scorned place. Then, when she hath these worthy prints defaced out of the minds that can endure her hand, what doth she then supply instead of these? Forsooth, some old reports of altered laws, clamours of courts and cavils upon words, grounds without grounds supported by conceit, and reasons more of subtlety than sense. What shall I say of moot points strange, and doubts still argued but never yet agreed? And she that doth deride the poet's law, because he must his words in order place, forgets her forms of pleading, more precise, more bound to words than is the poet's lore. And for these fine conceits she fitly chose a tongue that barbarism itself doth use. We, noting all these wrongs, did long expect their hard condition would have made them wise to offer us their service placed so ill. But finding them addicted to their choice, and specially desirous to present your majesty with fruits of province new, now did resolve to double force and skill, and found and used the vantage of the time, surprised their fort, and took them captives all. So now submiss as to their state belongs, they gladly yield their homage long withdrawn, and poetry, which they did most contemn, they glory now her favours for to wear. My sisters laughed to see them take the pen, and lose their wits in all unwonted walks. But to your highness that delight we leave, to see these poets new their style advance. Such as they are, or naught, or little worth, deign to accept, and therewith we beseech that novelty give price to worthless things.
So, yes, unto this speech, one of the gentlemen, currently being performed by a cat, one of the gentlemen answered as followeth.
Good ladies, unacquaint with cunning reach, and easily led to glory in your power, hear now abashed our late dissembled minds, nor now the first time, as yourselves best know, ye muses sought our service to command. Oft have you wandered from Parnassus hill, and showed yourselves with sweet and tempting grace, but yet returned, your train increased with few. This resolution doth continue still, unto Astraea's name we honour bear, whose sound perfections we do more admire than all the vaunted store of Muses' gifts. Let this be one, which last you put in ear, in well depraving that deserveth praise. No eloquence disguising reason's shape, nor poetry each vain affection's nurse, no various history that doth lead the mind abroad to ancient tales from instant use. Nor these, nor other mo too long to note, can win Astraea's servants to remove their service once devote to better things. They, with attentive minds and serious wits, revolve records of deep judicial acts. They weigh with steady and indifferent hand each word of law, each circumstance of right. They hold the grounds which time and use hath soothed, though shallow sense conceive them as conceits. Presumptuous sense, whose ignorance dare judge of things removed by reason from her reach. One doubt, in moots by argument increased, clears many doubts experience doth object. The language she first chose and still retains exhibits naked truth in aptest terms. Our industry maintaineth unimpeached, prerogative of prince, respect to peers, the commons' liberty and each man's right. Suppresseth mute in force and practice forward, things that for worth our studious care deserve. Yet never did we banish nor reject those ornaments of knowledge nor of tongues. That slander envious ignorance did raise. With muses still we intercourse allow, Rachael state with all their foreign freight, but never homage nor acknowledgement, such as of subjects' allegiance doth require. Now hear the cause of your late conquest won. We had discovered your intent to be, and sure ye ladies are not secret all, speech and not silence is the muses' grace. We well perceived, I say, your mind to be, t'employ such prisoners as themselves did yield to serve a queen, for whom her purest gold nature refined, that she might therein set both private and imperial virtues all. Thus, sovereign lady of our laws and us, zeal may transform us into any shape. We which with trembling hand the pen did guide, never well pleased, all for desire to please. For still your rare perfections did occur, which are admired of muses and of men. Oh, with how steady hand and heart assured should we take up the warlike lance or sword, with mind resolved to spend our loyal blood, your least command with speed to execute. Oh, that before our time the fleeting ship ne'er wandered had in watery wilderness, that we might first that venture undertake in strange attempt to prove our loyal hearts. Be it soldiers, seamen, poets, or what else, in service once enjoined to ready minds, our want of use should our devoir increase. Now, since instead of art we bring but zeal, instead of praise we humbly pardon crave, the matter which we purpose to present, since straits of time our liberty controls, in tragic notes the plagues of vice recounts. How suits a tragedy for such a time? Thus, for that since your sacred majesty in gracious hands the regal sceptre held, all tragedies are fled from state to stage.
Thus finishes the introduction by Nicholas Trott. So it's very much original performance context full. This is all referring very much to the presence of Her Majesty at that precise moment in time. It's doing a lot of business there that it's quite difficult really to recapture in a modern performance. Thoughts about what it's doing there and what it's playing around with. How are you finding the speeches? The gentlemen and the muses. Are they in conflict? Are they beyond the whole being captive, etc.? Thoughts from the room, Eric.
I kept expecting Liza to start stroking the cat like in Godfather style.
You're right. I should have petted him Godfather style. I do like the idea of the muse leading the poor captive students. That's this was an Inns of Court play, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because and we will see a lot of legalistic debates, but I like the idea of the law students as these poor captive creatures that poetry has captured from their mistress, the law.
Yeah, it's the way that all of these intercorp plays seem to be working as well. They're really an outlet for students who really should be getting on with their work, shouldn't they? But they're not. They're getting on with other things.
In the time-honored tradition of students everywhere.
Yes. Hi. Yes, long may it continue. Work, schmirk. Other thoughts? Oh, Rachael.
No, just what Liza was saying, like how they're like prisoners to, poetry, and it's really these muses. It's really they're being led into this. It's not them doing it. It's kind of like that thing where it's like, like an epiphany strikes you. It's not something that they have in themselves. It's like an outside force working on them to make them do this. And then I don't know, the gentleman was talking about, you know, freedom and stuff, and it's like the poetry takes them and makes them like captives to help free their voices and raise their philosophical minds.
Okay, David.
I mean, to a degree, it feels like a gentle battle of the sexes as well, in the sort of obviously all paying homage to Elizabeth, but the men being captured and led, which kind of prepares us for Guenevera's role as we proceed.
Yeah, and it's the way I like this sort of that end point of going, you know, we're heading in a sort of the tragic notes of things, because you're running the country so well. We don't have tragedy in our day-to-day lives. We have it on stage, which is frankly a good state to be living in. Quite like that as a state of being. Eric.
I was gonna say that the whole muses thing just reminded me of that common conditions bit. It's like, yes, look, we have these are the muses. They don't have a pen, or well, they have one pen between the three of them, and it just felt very sort of like dance, sort of poking a guy with the stick or something.
I think you're thinking of the Cobbler's Prophecy. You're confusing plays beginning with C.
Yeah, I know. It's all the C's, CCC and stuff. Anyway, yeah.
Quite a few C's in the Cobbler's Prophecy. But anyway, we'll move on.
Well, it's also Eric is right, and then also the morality plays involving study, like wit and science and industry and idleness.
Yeah.
Where you know students get captured and beaten up, but it's for their own good.
Absolutely. Well, you know, that's how you learn. Physical violence from somebody else. That's education for you. Certainly the early modern kind. But yeah, no, bringing out wit and science. Yeah, there are real connections there. But I'm liking that very much. Anyway, we need to get into the action itself. Let's get into some drama. Before we get to the drama, and I'll probably let a few scenes run into themselves rather than stop and start them too often, we're going to start with a dumb show. One of those really big things that intercourt plays are really into. So, sounding the music. There rose 3 furies from under the stage. Does that sound familiar to anyone? From the other week, apparelled accordingly with snakes and flames about their black hair and garments. The first with a snake in the right hand and a cup of wine, with a snake athwart the cup in the left hand. The second with a firebrand in the right hand and a cupid in the left. The third with a whip in the right hand and a Pegasus in the left. While they went masking about the stage, there came from another place 3 nuns, which walked by themselves. Then, after a full sight given to the beholders, they all parted, the Furies to Mordred's house, the nuns to the cloister. By the first Fury with the snake and cup was signified the banquet of Uther Pendragon, and afterward his death, which ensued by the poisoned cup. The second Fury with her firebrand and Cupid represented Uther's unlawful heat and love, conceived at the banquet, which never ceased in his posterity. By the third, with her whip and Pegasus, was prefigured the cruelty and ambition which thence ensued and continued to the effecting of this tragedy. By the nuns was signified the remorse and despair of Guenevera, that after that, wanting other hope, took a nunnery for her refuge. After their departure, the 4, which represented the chorus, took their places. So yes, a lot of things being signified there. How much of the signification the audience gets or not, or whether it's just a flow of images. Often with the dumb shows, we don't really get explanations until much later in the act. So sort of almost expressionistic series of images flying past. But anyway, we're going to go straight into Act 1, Scene 1. Gorlois.
Since thus through channels black of limbo lake, and deep infernal flood of Stygian pool, the ghastly Charon's boat transported back thy ghost from Pluto's pits in glooming shade, to form a light, once lost by destiny's doom, where proud Pendragon, broiled with shameful lust, despoiled thee, heiress of wife, of land and life. Now, Gorlois, work thy wish, cast here thy gall, glut on revenge, thy wrath abhors delays. What though, besides Pendragon's poisoned end, the vile reproach he wrought thee by thy peer, through deep increase of crimes alike is plagued, and that the shame thou sufferedst for his lusts reboundeth back and stiflest in his stock, yet is not mischief's measure all fulfilled, nor wreak sufficient wrought. Thy murdered corpse and dukedom reft for heavier vengeance cries. Come, therefore, blooms of settled mischief's root. Come, each thing else what fury can invent. Wreak all at once, infect the air with plagues, till bad to worse, till worse to worse be turned. Let mischiefs know no mean, nor plagues an end. Let the offspring's sin exceed the former stock. Let none have time to hate his former fault, but still with fresh supply let punished crime increase till time it make us complete sin. Go to some fact, with no age shall allow, nor yet conceal, some fact must needs be durred, that for the horror great and outrage fell, whereof may well beseem Pendragon's brood. And first, while Arthur's navies homeward float, triumphantly bedecked with Roman spoils, let Guenevera express what frantic moods distract a wife when wronging wedlock's rights. Both fond and fell, she loves and loathes at once. Let deep despair pursue till, loathing life, her hateful head in cowl and cloister lurk. Let traitorous Mordred keep his sire from shore. Let Britain rest a prey for foreign powers. Let sword and fire, still fed with mutual strife, turn all the kings to ghosts. Let civil wars and discords swell till all the realm be torn, even in that soil whereof myself was duke, where first my spouse Egerna brake her vow, where this ungracious offspring was begot. In Cornwall, there let Mordred's death declare. Let Arthur's fatal wound bewray the wrong, the murder vile, the rape of wife and weal, wherewith their sires incensed both gods and man. Thus Pendragon's seed, so sown and reaped, those cursed imps, ill-born and worst consumed, shall render just revenge for parents' crimes and penance due, to assuage my swelling wrath. The whiles, O Cassiopeia, gem-bright sign, most sacred sight and sweet celestial star, this climate's joy, placed an imperial throne, with fragrant olive branch portending peace, and whosoever besides, ye heavenly powers, her stately train with influence divine, and mild aspect all prone to Britain's good, foresee what present plagues do threat this isle. Prevent not this my wreak, for you there rests a happier age, 1,000 years to come, an age for peace, religion, wealth, and ease, when all the world shall wonder at your bliss. That is yours. Leave this to Gorlois's ghost, and see where comes one engine of my hate, with moods and manners fit for my revenge.
I am going to pause there before we go into extended scenes, because that is very much the scene of its own action. You really got into the rhythm there. There was a real momentum when that really got going, it's building to this point there that I'm really start enjoying that. Things are not going well. Thoughts from the room about this and the dumb show into it, Liza?
Well, I have to say I love the dumb show as described. Love when Furies go on stage. They're always great stage material. As we were saying in the chat, a snake in one hand and a cup of wine in the other is pretty much goals. and having two friends to share it with just makes it better. Like, ultimate job satisfaction for the Furies. Now, Gorlois, it's a really interesting choice to bring Gorlois on stage, because in a tragedy about King Arthur, you always think Arthur is going to be represented as the good guy. And, we'll see about that, but Gorlois is reminding us that Arthur was begotten in what, through an early modern Christian-type lens, was adultery and sin. That Gorlois was the husband of Igerna, who in the legends is Igraine, the Duchess of so Gorlois and Igerna were Duke and Duchess of Cornwall. Gorlois was declared war on by Uther Pendragon, or Pendragon. Uther and Gorlois were fighting, but one night Merlin, as played by Colin Morgan in the most excellent TV series, Merlin did some magic and he changed Uther into the image of Gorlois, and Uther went over to Gorlois's castle and lay with Igraine, or Igerna, and that was the beginning of Arthur. And Gorlois at that point was not dead yet. Shortly afterwards, Uther did go back to the battlefield and resume his own shape and kill Gorlois. But Gorlois's ghost is here to remind us that some dodgy stuff is going on and to lay a very potent curse on Arthur and Guinevere.
Yes, it's always nice to open with a ghost. I like a good ghost. I'll go to David, then Rachel.
But even despite all of what Liza's just excellently laid out, Gorlois still feels it necessary to explain to the audience that in 1,000 years' time, i.e. when it's being watched, everything's going to be happier and better.
Yes, that's the great thing about all these horrific tragedies that we get coming out of the theatre court, is that the times are good now. Times are good now, and we do have different variations on what Gorlois says in the play as well. So there's an interesting question as to who got it right, because there are some interesting issues about what is actually being said, which we may dig into later in the week. Any additional thought, Rachel?
No, I was just gonna say about that rhythm in the speech. I think this coming right after the dumb show. It says it starts off sounding the music. I think there's maybe drums or something underneath this speech, or maybe it was, I know we always say like this could be a musical, but I do feel like that there is, even though he's not singing, there is some sort of rhythm there to set people up for just, set up the suspense, the stuff that's coming out. Eric's writing in the chat, fire and brimstone. I really feel like they are setting that up, like this is like a storm and like lightning like is going on in the background. Somebody's like got one of those things going.
They've got the thunder. They've got the thunder sheet going, and they're really going for it, for the appearance of this terrifying ghost. Yeah, so not necessarily even music, but that sound scoring going with it of effect and thing. And we don't know what the music was, so how disjointed it is and terrifying it, because it's following on from the Furies. So yeah, absolutely.
And then just also that reminder, because I think even though I don't know how this play ends, the myth of Arthur, it doesn't end well for him. So it's like setting it up kind of like, remember, there's people who have a grudge against this guy for all their different reasons. And then just how he also calls him by his last name, like Pendragon, like he's coming out of hell and all these, mythical dragons. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to decide now, what's too early for us, how long is long enough for a spoiler? Yeah, I think we all know bad things happen to Arthur. Okay. I'm going to let the next couple of scenes run into each other because they are flowing action. I'm not going to stop and start as much as I have done for some of these plays because it does break up the natural flow of things. That was the end of a scene. Oh, sorry, Eric was going to say something. I did see a hand. I'll go to you before we...
I was just going to say that I really like the intro where he goes, "Glut on revenge, thy wrath abhors delays." Just that bit sounds really good. Sorry, this was me preparing for the next part.
I did,
and I'm overheating.
I like it. I like it. The lighting works. That's very much the lighting for this show, isn't it? It's little pools of light and darkness. Okay, so we go to Act 1, Scene 2. The smoke has cleared. The thunder and lightning has gone. There are no furies wandering around. And we have Guenevera and Fronia on stage.
And there is he, after 9 years' space return, and see her face, whom he so long disdained. Was I then chosen wedded for his stale, to look and gape for his retireless sails? Puffed back and flittering spread to every wind? Oh, wrong, content with no revenge, seek out undared plagues, teach Mordred how to rage, attempt some bloody, dreadful, irksome fact, and such as Mordred he would rather wear his. Why stayest? It must be done. Let bridle go. Frame out some trap beyond all vulgar guile, beyond Medea's wiles. Attempt some fact that any wight unwieldy of herself, that any spouse unfaithful to her fear, durst e'er attempt in most despair of weal. Spare no revenge, be it poison, knife, or fire.
Good madam, temper these outrageous moods, and let not will usurp where wit should rule.
The wrath that breatheth blood doth loath to lurk. What reason most withholds rage rings perforce. I am disdained, so will I not be long. That very hour that he shall first arrive shall be the last that shall afford him life. Who, though neither seas nor lands nor wars abroad suffice for thy foil, yet shalt thou find far worse at home thy deep displeased spouse. Whate'er thou hast subdued in all thy stay, this hand shall now subdue, and then stay thy fill. What's this? My mind recoils and irks these shreds. Anger delays. My grief begins to assuage. My fury faints, and sacred wedlock's faith presents itself. Why shunst thou fearful wrath? Add coals afresh. Preserve me to this venge. At least exile thyself to realms unknown, and steal his wealth to help thy banished state. For flight is best. O base and heartless fear. Theft? Exile? Flight? All these may fortune send unsought, but to thee beseems more high revenge. Come, spiteful fiends, come, heaps of furies fell, not one by one, but all at once. My breast raves not enough, it likes me to be filled with greater monsters yet. My heart doth throb, my liver boils. Somewhat my mind portends, uncertain what, but whatsoever, it's huge. And so it exceed be what it will, it's well. Omit no plague, and none will be enough. Wrong cannot be revenged but by excess.
Oh, spare this heat. You yield too much to rage. You're too unjust. Is there no mean in wrong?
Wrong claims a mean when first you offer wrong. The mean is vain when wrong is in revenge. Great harms cannot be hid. The grief is small that can receive advice or rule itself.
Hatred concealed doth often hap to hurt, but once professed it oftener fails revenge. How better thou wert to repress your ire. A lady's best revenge is to forgive. What mean is in your hate? How much soe'er you can invent or dare, so much you hate.
And would you know what mean there is in hate? Call love to mind and see what mean is there. My love, redoubled love and constant faith, engaged unto Mordred, works so deep that both my heart and marrow quite be burnt, and sinews dried with force of wantless flames. Desire to joy him still torments my mind. Fear of his want doth add a double grief. Lo, hear the love that stirs this meaningless hate.
Eschew it far, such love impugns the laws.
Unlawful love doth like when lawful loathes.
And is your love of husband quite extinct?
The greater flame must needs delay the less. Besides, his sore revenge I greatly fear.
How can you then attempt a fresh offence?
Who can appoint a stint to her offence?
But here the greatness of the fact should move.
The greater it, the fitter for my grief.
To kill your spouse,
A stranger and a foe.
your liege and king.
He wants both realm and crown.
Nature affords not to your sex such strength.
Love, anguish, wrath will soon afford enough.
What rage is this?
Such as himself shall rule.
Whom gods do press enough, will you annoy?
Whom gods do press they bend, whom man annoys he breaks.
Your grief is more than his deserts. Each fault requires an equal hate. Be not severe, where crimes be light. As you have felt, so grieve.
And seems it light to want him 9 years space than to be spoiled of one I hold more dear? Think all too much, be it ne'er so just that feeds continual grief. The lasting woe is worst.
Yet let your highness shun these desperate moods. Cast off this rage and fell-disposed mind. Put not shame quite to flight. Have some regard both of your sex and future fame of life. Use no such cruel thoughts as far exceed a manly mind, much more a woman's heart.
Well, shame is not so quite exiled, but that I can and will respect your sage advice. Your counsel I accept. Give leave a while till fiery wrath may slake and rage relent.
Exit Fronia. Enter Angharat, either immediately or in a few lines' time.
The love that for his rage will not be ruled must be restrained. Fame shall receive no foil. Let Arthur live, whereof to make him sure myself will die, and so prevent his harms. Why stayest thou amazed, O slothful wrath? Mischief is meant to dispatch it on thyself.
Her breast, not yet appeased from former rage, hath changed her wrath, which wanting mean to work another's woe, for such is fury's wont, seeks out his own, and raves upon itself. Assuage, alas, that over-fervent ire. Through too much anger you offend too much. Thereby the rather you deserve to live, for seeming worthy in yourself to die.
Death is decreed. What kind of death, I doubt? Whether to drown or stifle up this breath, or forcing blood to die with dint of knife. All hope of prosperous hap is gone. My fame, my faith, my spouse. No good is left unlost. Myself am left. There's left both seas and lands, and sword and fire and chains and choice of harms. Oh, knowing, easeless grief, who now can heal my maimed mind? It must be healed by death.
No mischief must be done while I be by. Or if there must be more than one. If death it be you seek, I seek it too. Alone you may not die. With me you may.
They that will drive the unwilling to their death, or frustrate death in those that fain would die, offend alike. They spoil that bootless spare.
But will my tears and mournings move you naught?
Then it is best to die when friends do mourn.
Each where is death. The fates have well ordained that each man may bereave himself of life, but none of death. Death is so sure a doom. 1,000 ways do guide us to our graves. Who then can ever come too late to that, whence when he is come, he never can return? Or what avails to hasten on our ends, and long for that which destinies have sworn? Look back in time. Too late is to repent when furious rage hath once cut off the choice.
Death is an end of pain, no pain itself. Is it meet a plague for such excessive wrong should be so short? Should one stroke answer all? And wouldst thou die? Well, that contents the laws. What then for Arthur's ire? What for thy fame which thou hast stained? What for thy stock thou shamest? Not death nor life alone can give a full revenge. Join both in one, die and yet live. Where pain may not be oft, let it be long. Seek out some lingering death, whereby thy corpse may neither touch the dead nor joy the quick. die, but no common death. Past nature's bound.
Set plates aside, despair yields no relief. The more you search a wound, the more it stings.
When guilty minds torment themselves, they heal. Whilst wounds be cured, grief is a salve for grief.
Grief is no just esteemer of our deeds, which so hath yet been done, proceeds from chance.
The mind and not the chance doth make the unchaste.
Then is your fault from fate. You rest excused. None can be deemed faulty for her fate.
No fate but manners fail when we offend. Impute mishaps to fates, to manners faults.
Love is an error that may blind the best.
A mighty error oft hath seemed a sin. My death is vowed, and death must needs take place, but such a death as stands with just remorse. Death to the world and her slippery joys, a full divorce from all this courtly pomp, where daily penance done for each offence may render due revenge for every wrong. Which to accomplish, pray my dearest friends, that they forthwith, attired in saddest guise, conduct me to the cloister next hereby, there to profess and renounce the world.
Alas, what change were that? From kingly roofs to cloistered cells, to live and die at once. To want your stately troops, your friends and kin, to shun the shows and sights of stately court, to see and sort alive your country's death. Yea, whatsoe'er even death itself withdraws from any else, that life withdraws from you. Yet since your highness is so fully bent, I will obey. The whiles assuage your grief.
And exit Angharat. The scene does continue, but we will pause there mid-flow in the act. Oh yeah, it's doing a lot of work here, and I put it in the chat. Just all this Greek tragedy is flowing at us at the moment. You know, it feels, you know, that sort of waiting for ships to arrive. What is my, you know, what are we going to do about my returning husband? Sort of moments here. As, you know, also perhaps even a little bit of Antigone in that last exchange there. We've gone from Fronia, who's described as a lady of her trainer servant. Then we got Angharat, who's supposed to be the Guenevera's sister. So we got two very different status people sort of talking through the options, trying to argue for what to do next. No real statement as to who anybody is. Nobody's really explaining who they are to anyone, which is a bit of an issue. I mean, it's a very solvable issue, but there is a sense of going, if you weren't reading the script, would you actually know who Guenevera actually is?
Yeah, Guenevera, and also, you know, if the playwright were more experienced in writing for the professional stage, he might have Guenevera call Angharat by her name and say things like "my dear sister" to her, just, you know, to make that relationship clear.
Nobody uses names at all. I don't think. Have we had one? I don't think we have, really. I mean, apart from people describing people who are off stage rather than people who are on stage. But yeah, Liza, sorry, I cut you mid-flow.
The only other thing I wanted to point up is that there appears to be no Lancelot in this version. So Mordred, I'm assuming that Mordred, as he is in Malory, is Arthur's son begotten in adultery. So Arthur's son, but not Guinevere's. And Guinevere...
That would be really awkward.
And Guinevere appears to have a love interest in Mordred rather than in Lancelot. This very much echoes Phaedra and Hippolytus, and sets up Guinevere as not the usual kind of, not quite as sympathetic as she's normally. Normally there is no normal. There is no normal. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's why I was bringing up the Oresteia. You know, it's very Clytemnestra, and it gets us waiting for the return of Agamemnon. You know, they've been doing things. What is the solution? Do you kill Arthur, or do you just run away to a nunnery in shame? You know, what do you do? What do you do? So many options. Thoughts on the room? David first, then Rachael.
I don't think it matters. I mean, it would be useful if Guenevera were flagged up a little more clearly. I admit, but I mean, in a way, the other women, they're almost like extensions of Guenevera's psyche in a way. So I don't think it matters. You know, would it really have mattered if Fronia were the sister and Angharat were the waiting woman? I don't think so, really. I don't think they've got that much individuality. They're kind of reflections of Guenevera, I think.
Yeah. Rachael, then Eric, then Liza.
For the flagging her for people knowing that she's Guenevera, I mean, she says my spouse, and she's what then for his ire, for Arthur's ire, and she says Arthur's name a bit. Maybe people just know this tale well enough that it's kind of like I don't know, I don't want to say stock character, but they are maybe familiar enough that they're like, oh, okay, I get who she is, and I don't know how they tell that this is her sister, but yeah. And then I don't know, maybe the part where she says a full divorce from all this courtly pomp. Maybe Guenevera is being portrayed in a slightly sympathetic light just because this is during Elizabeth's reign, and I don't know.
Eric.
I was just going to ask, wasn't there a morality play where we found that they referred to a cloistered cell, but they didn't actually mean a nunnery, they meant something else?
They've been throwing nuns at us since the beginning of the play, so I'm assuming that's where they.
Yeah,
I don't remember that, but you may very well be right.
But yeah, it was this thing about also well, technically Guinevere is identified by accident by Fronia, because Fronia tells her, "Your liege and your king," and then she goes, "Yeah, he just wants the realm and the crown, not me." Like sort of.
I mean, it's relatively straightforward and it's very fixable. But it is just that sense of going, give us something explicitly telling us who people are. There is sort of that assumption that again, maybe we should have read the argument before we started, because maybe that, especially at least the Queen, would probably have been handed the argument, and there you go, get to read it first. Element there, but we can't assume that today that's something that's going to happen. Unless we have a sliding Star Wars style intro at the top, which is not impossible. Liza, then David.
Just to say that to David's point about the two women who aren't Guenevera being essentially extensions of her psyche, that's increasingly, certainly in French classical drama, and I don't know how the dates line up with this play and say Racine. Robert, when is this play? I've forgotten.
1588. It doesn't. I don't think it quite lines up with Racine. It certainly lines up with a lot of similar kinds of French drama, but not necessarily that name.
Yeah, but it's a convention in that to have, for each main character to have a confidant, and the confidant is sort of there for the main character to talk to and bounce ideas off of, but they only occasionally have characters of their own. I was wondering about a possible parallel with Mary, Queen of Scots, but then again, I don't know whether the dates on that match up.
Again, off the top of my head, that's one for someone to Google.
Rachel's got it.
Rachel's got it. You're muted at the moment, so if you're saying wonderful words,
that's what I meant with like Guenevera, because Gorlois comes up and he says that, Arthur is, that, he wasn't born between two married people. There's not a lot of legitimacy there. And I think, that was part of, Henry VIII's divorce from his first wife, is that it wasn't a legitimate marriage. And so, right? Am I getting it right? Is Mary from his first marriage? Am I right there? Or no?
No, that's a different Mary.
Wait.
You're right that it was Queen Mary, but she's dead by now.
Yeah, previous year.
Throw out my previous idea.
But you're right to talk about bastardy. I mean, a lot of people, Catholics, for example, are calling Elizabeth a bastard. They're saying that Henry's marriage to Anne was not legitimate, and of course Protestants say Henry's marriage to Catherine, the previous wife, was not legitimate. And
yes, it was exactly like that. Yes, it's the previous year, so that's is easily rememberable because it's just the year before Armada. Anyway, sorry.
So Mary of Scots gets executed the year before this play.
Yeah, because that's one of the triggers for the Armada to be happening. It's an easy memory thing to remember, which I forgot.
And she, sort of hopped around husbands quite a bit, as I recall.
Well, yes, that's a bit of there was complications. There were complications. David, I think.
No, don't. I have nothing more interesting to add. Let's carry on.
Eric, briefly.
I was just gonna say that it's a bit also conflict of conscience, where it kind of goes, yeah, death is a good thing. Totally.
What is the best worst option here?
Yeah, pretty much.
For someone in her position. Okay, we have reached Act 1, Scene 4. It's an ongoing, flowing scene, and we'll go through to just before the choruses now. So Guenevera has been left alone, but not for any length of time, because immediately we have the entrance of Mordred and Conan.
The hour which erst I always feared most, the certain ruin of my desperate state, is happened now. Why turn'st thou mine thy back? Why at the first assault dost thou recoil? Trust to it the angry heavens contrive some spite and dreadful doom to augment thy cursed hap. Oppose to each revenge thy guilty head, and shun no pain nor plague fit for thy fact. What shouldst thou fear, that seest not what to hope? No dangers left before, all's at thy back. He safely stands that stands beyond his harms. Thine, death, is all that east and west can see. For thee we live, our coming is not long. Spare us but whiles we may prepare our graves. Though thou wert slow, we hasten of ourselves. The hour that gave did also take our lives. No sooner men than mortal were we born. I see mine end draws on, I feel my plagues.
No plague for one ill-born to die as ill.
O Queen, my sweet associate in this plunge and desperate plight, behold, the time is come that either justifies our former faults or shortly sets us free from every fear.
My fear is past, and wedlock love hath won. Retire we thither yet, whence we ought not to have stirred. Call back chaste faith again. The way that leads to good is ne'er too late. Whoso repents is guiltless of his crimes.
What means this course? Is Arthur's wedlock safe? Or can he love that hath just cause to hate? That nothing else were to be feared is most apparent. That he hates at home, where'er he be whose fancy strays abroad. Think then, our love is not unknown to him, whereof what patience can be safely hoped? nor love nor sovereignty can bear a peer.
Why dost thou still stir up my frames? Why dost thou still stir up my flames delayed? His strays and errors must not move my mind. A law for private men binds not the king. What, that I ought not to condemn my liege, nor can, thus guilty to mine own offence. Where both have done amiss, both will relent. He will forgive that needs must be forgiven.
A likely thing, your faults must make you friends. What sets you both at odds must join you both. Think well. He casts already for revenge, and how to plague us both. I know his law, a judge severe to us, mild to himself. What then avails you to return too late when you have passed too far? You feed vain hopes.
The further past, the more this fault is yours. It served your turn to usurp your father's crown. His is the crime, whom crime stands most instead.
They that conspire in faults offend alike. Crime makes them equal whom it jointly stains. If for my sake you then partook my guilt, you cannot guiltless seem. The crime was joint.
Well, should she seem most guiltless unto thee, whate'er she be that's guilty for thy sake? The remnant of that sober mind, which thou hadst heretofore ne'er vanquished, yet resists, suppress for shame that impious mouth so taught, and so much skill to abuse the wedded bed. Look back to former fates. Troy still had stood, had not her prince made light of wedlock's lore. The vice that threw down Troy doth threat thy throne. Take heed, there Mordred stands, whence Paris fell.
And exit Guenevera, leaving Conan and Mordred alone.
Since that your highness knows for certain truth what power your sire prepares to claim his right, it nearly now concerns you to resolve, in humblest sort, to reconcile yourself gainst his return.
Will war?
That lies in chance.
I have as great a share in chance as he.
His ways be blind that maketh chance's guide.
Whose refuge lies in chance, what dares he not?
Wars were a crime far worse than all the rest.
The safest passage is from bad to worse.
That were to pass too far and put no mean.
He is a fool that puts a mean in crimes.
But sword and fire would cause a common wound.
So sword and fire will often sear the sore.
Extremist cures must not be used first.
In desperate times the headlong way is best.
Ye have many foes.
No more than faithful friends.
Trust it, their faith will faint, where fortune fails, where many men pretend to love to one, whose power may do what good or harm he will. 'Tis hard to say which be his faithful friend. Dame Flattery flitteth off. She loves and hates, with time, a present friend, an absent foe.
But yet I'll hope the best.
Even then you fear the worst. Fears follow hopes, as fumes do flames. Mischief is sometimes safe, but ne'er secure. The wrongful scepters held with trembling hand.
Whose rule wants right, his safety's in his sword, for sword and scepter comes to kings at once.
The kingliest point is to effect but right.
Weak is the scepter's hold that seeks but right. The care whereof hath dangered many crowns, as much as water differeth from the fire, so much man's profit jars from what is just. A free recourse to wrong doth oft secure the doubtful seat, and plucks down many a foe. The sword must seldom cease. A sovereign's hand is scantly safe, but whiles it smites. Let him usurp no crown that likes a guiltless life. Aspiring power and justice seld agree. He always fears that shames to offer wrong.
What son would use such wrong against his sire?
Come, son, come, sire, I first prefer myself. And since a wrong must be, then it excels when 'tis to gain a crown. I hate a peer. I loathe, I irk, I do detest a head. Be it nature, be it reason, be it pride, I love to rule. My mind nor with, nor by, nor after any claims, but chief and first.
But think what fame and grievous brutes would run of such disloyal and unjust attempts.
Fame goes not with our ghosts. The senseless soul once gone neglects what vulgar brute reports. She is both light and vain.
She noteth, though.
She feareth states.
She carpeth nevertheless.
She's soon suppressed.
As soon she springs again, tongues are untamed, and fame is envy's dog, that absent barks and present fawns as fast. It fearing dares, and yet hath never done, but durs, though death redeem us all from foes. Besides, yet death redeems us not from tongues.
Ere Arthur land, the sea shall blush with blood, and all the strands with smoking slaughters reek. Now Mars, protect me in my first attempt. If Mordred scape, this realm shall want no wars.
And everyone clears the stage, and the chorus 1, 2, 3, and 4 step forward, having watched everything.
See here the drifts of Gorlois, Cornish Duke, and deep desire to shake his sovereign's throne. How foul his fall, how bitter his rebuke, whilst wife and weal and life and all be gone. He now in hell tormented once that good. Lo, lo, the end of traitorous bones and blood.
Pendragon, broiled with flames of filthy fires, by Merlin's mists enjoyed Igerna's bed. Next spoiled Gorlois, doubling his desires. Then was himself through force of poison sped. Who sows in sin shall reap his pain. The doom is sworn, death gardens death again.
Whiles Arthur wars abroad and reaps renown, Guenevera prefers his son's desire, and traitorous Mordred still usurps the crown, affording fuel to her quenchless fire. But death's too good, and life too sweet for these, that wanting both should taste of neither's ease.
In Rome, the gaping gulf would not decrease, till Curtius' course had closed her yearning jaws. In Thebes, the rot and murrain would not cease, till Laius' brood had paid for breach of laws. In Britain, wars and discord will not stent, till Uther's line and offspring quite be spent.
End of the act. And yeah, that really got going, didn't it? I mean, it's interesting with that chorus at the end. It's kind of there's quite a lot there where I'm going, that'd be quite good at the beginning. You know, it's nice that they're just going over just, did you get everything? You know, it's like they've been taking notes, and this is some feedback from based on what everybody's watched. But yeah, the journey of Mordred from that beginning to the end, where it's just going, you know, the gloves are off, and it's just, I love to rule.
Well, I just can't wait. Wait, no, are we going to be sued if for copyright reasons or something?
Yeah. Don't go there. But yeah. So we've, you know, it's the reality. Mordred coming in and going, look, we can't back it down now. Arthur's coming, and you know, he knows, and yeah, he wants to go forward. Conan's not so keen, just going, we might not have enough people on our side, you know. Yeah.
Conan, what is best in life?
Yeah. We were so good not going there.
I'm
David.
sorry, someone had to.
Yeah, I know.
Conan is a very interesting character. I mean, unlike Guenevera's familiars who are there to sort of pacify and ameliorate, Conan seems to be goading Mordred more than anything else. It seems as if he's there to push him further. I mean, it's odd that Mordred would have such a kind of argumentative person as his sidekick. I mean, it works beautifully as a scene, but it kind of is pressing him on, isn't it, rather than pulling him back?
Rachael.
I don't know if he's goading him on. I feel like he's more experienced, and he's saying, like, think about the logistics of actually doing that. You know, like, you've got a lot of, you know, they're going to flatter you because you're the prince. Well, you're the prince, but if you say something against the king, you're gonna see a lot more fair weather friends.
Yeah. I don't think he's intending to goad him, but you know, given he is the advisor, he doesn't really know the man he's advising because he's having the opposite effect. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Other thoughts? I mean, Liza, you were clearly getting into Mordred as we went on.
Oh, very much so. I'm only sorry that Alan Rickman isn't alive and in this Zoom room to play it. I mean, like Alan Rickman circa 1993 or so.
Yeah. There's something about this. It's it's in the same way. I don't think it's actually necessarily going to progress that way, but same as I felt with Gorlois and some other plays as well, where there's almost, it's just a snapshot. It's like suddenly we just zoomed in into this, rather than saying, and here is a narrative and we're moving on. This is just, here is a particular crisis point and we've just landed right in the middle of it. Or, in a way that's not very Chekhovian, but is sort of a bit like the kind of dramaturgy that Chekhov did. Saying that you don't explain things that are going on because those people are in the room. It's just this. Everybody's discussing the same problem. They're discussing it from different angles, and it's this. Arthur's coming. What do we do? Arthur's coming. So it has a really nice drive to it, actually. I've really enjoyed most of that. Just quibbles really about just things to do in performance to make sure the audience has a chance to know where they are. Rachael.
No, I was just gonna say, like, the pace of this scene seems very fast. Like I don't want to say like a comedy because I don't think it's being played as a comedy, but it seems like it's paced at that same speed and rhythm. And I think there's so much like physically with the words, like, because there's so many similar sounds that the writer's putting together for actors to play with. And it's like, I can imagine like that there's a lot of emotion in this scene just because it sounds like at some parts you'd be spitting or hissing at one another, and it's very impassioned, and it's that like beginning with the Furies. I think there's some of that echoes of the hellfire that Gorlois was coming in with in this style of speech that Conan and Mordred are going back and forth in.
Yeah, and we were saying at the beginning, these plays tend to have a lot of long speeches. Actually, this hasn't had that many long speeches. This has been very dynamic dialogue, apart from that very opening address. There have been a few quite chunky bits, but it really, it's changing, marking the changes a lot in terms of structure. Liza.
Yeah, I think you're right. The Mordred Conan scene does, or the extended Mordred scene with Guenevera and Conan does seem to move a little faster than Guenevera's earlier scenes, where with Guenevera's scenes the rhythm seemed to me at least very much speech, response, one-line debate section, speech, response. Whereas Mordred and Conan seems more like a debate of equals, and the longest speech is Mordred's right at the top of the scene, which isn't that long for this play, and then you get a lot more back and forth, and it's dynamic. They drop into one-line debate, they go into 4 or 5-line responses, and I do like Rachel's point about what the alliteration does. Now, I'm pretty sure that the playwright is... I could be wrong. I'm risking being wrong on YouTube forever. I'm wrong a lot on YouTube forever in many other videos of this group. I think the playwright may be using Geoffrey of Monmouth as a source, and Geoffrey of Monmouth writes alliterative verse. So... In fact, if memory serves, Monmouth writes unrhymed alliterative verse, mostly. So that translates quite easily into blank verse that uses quite a lot of alliteration. I could be wrong. check against the sources. I'm probably wrong. But I do like. I have a little bit more to say about the verse, but I'll save it for final thought.
Yeah. Just going back onto the structural thing about what the length of speeches and the dialogue. I think that it's not so much the length of what is being said and the structurally. I'm sort of just scanning the shape of the dialogue. I think it's just simply that Mordred and Conan and Mordred and Guenevera, they are people talking to each other, whereas earlier Guenevera is, as David was saying, sort of talking to herself, but with other people in the room, and it's a different game of what's going on. It's about the intent rather than actually what's structurally happening with the text in front. Eric.
Yeah, but also when Mordred appears, like Guinevere is kind of like still talking in the third person, and it's like sort of it's this weird change between like, why dost thou still stir up my flames delayed, and then his strays and errors must not move my mind. It's like this sort of conflict between what she's thinking and what she actually says. Sort of going back and forth between her asides, which are not written on the script. I just realized them while I read them.
Yeah, there are several bits where going, is this an aside? Is this, who is speaking to whom at certain points? There's lots of options there. Any more before we crash into the opening of Act 2? It's a shame, actually, that we're not completing units of Act 2, but we don't. We have to break the play up somehow for these sessions. So I think actually I will just let Act 2. We'll talk about the dumb show first, and we'll let the Nuntius bit happen. Yeah, no, we'll do that in a chunk, and then we'll do the other bit in a chunk. So we have an Act 2 with a dumb show, another dumb show. Whilst the music sounded, there came out of Mordred's house. I'm just going to put that. Just love the way they always say, they come out of X's house, and I'm going. It just makes it feel so domestic. He's got a semi, and there came out of Mordred's house a man stately attired, representing a king, walking once about the stage. Then out of the house appointed for Arthur, there came 3 nymphs, apparelled accordingly. The first holding a cornucopia in her hand, the second a golden branch of olive, the third a sheaf of corn. These orderly, one after another, offered these presents to the king, who scornfully refused. A second after which there came a man bareheaded, with long black shagged hair down to his shoulders, apparelled with an Irish jacket and shirt, having an Irish dagger by his side, and a dart in his hand, who first, with a threatening countenance, looking about, and then spying the king, did furiously chase and drive him into Mordred's house. The king represented Mordred, the 3 nymphs with their proffers, the treaty of peace, for which Arthur sent Gawain with an herald unto Mordred, who rejected it. The Irishman signified revenge and fury, which Mordred conceived after his foil on the shores, whereunto Mordred headlong yieldeth himself. A lot of images being thrown there, a lot of stuff that we're supposed to take in. But while those music and images are settling in, a messenger, Nuntius, enters the stage.
Lo, here at length the stately type of Troy, and Britain land the promised seat of Brute, decked with so many spoils of conquered kings. Hail, native soil, these 9 years' space unseen. To thee hath long renowned Rome at last held up her hands, bereft of former pomp. But first, inflamed with wonted valor's heat, amidst our sorest siege and thickest broils, she stoutly fought and fiercely waged wars. Tiberius courage gave, upbraiding oft the Roman force their wonted luck, and long retained rule by wars throughout the world. What shame it were, since such achieved spoils and conquests gained both far and wide, to want of courage then, when most it should be moved. How Britons erst paid tribute for their peace, but now rebel and dare them at their doors. For what was France but theirs, herewith incensed? They fiercely raved and bent their force afresh, which Arthur spying cried with thundering voice, "Fie, Britons, fie! What had bewitched you thus? So many nations foiled must Romans foil. What sloth is this? Have you forgot to war, which ne'er knew hour of peace? Turn to your foes, where you may bathe in blood and fight your fill. Let courage work. What can he not that dares?" Thus he, the puissant guide in doubtful wars, ashamed to shun his foes, inflamed his friends. Then yielding to his stately steed the reins, he furious drives the Roman troops about. He plies each place, lest fate's mort alter aught, pursuing hap and urging each success. He yields in naught, but instantly persists in all attempts, wherein whatso withstands his wish, he joys to work away by rack. And matching death to death, no passage seeks, but what destruction works with blade or blood. He scorns the yielded way, he fiercely raves to break and bruise the ranks in thickest throngs, all headlong bent and prone to present spoil. The foes enforced withstand, but much dismayed they senseless fight, while millions lose their lives. At length, Tiberius, pierced with point of spear, doth bleeding fall, engorged with deadly wound. Hereat the rest recoil and headlong fly, each man to save himself. The battle quails, and Britons win unto their most renown. Then Arthur took Tiberius' breathless corpse and sent it to the senators at Rome with charge to say, "This is the tribute due which Arthur ought. As time hereafter serves, he'll pay the like again, the while he rests your debtor thus. But oh, this sweet success, pursued with greater harms, turned soon to sour. For lo, when foreign soils and seas were passed with safe return, and that the king should land, who but his only son, O outrage rare, with hugy host withstood him on the shore. There were prepared the foreign aids from far. There were the borrowed powers of diverse kings. There were our parents, brethren, sons and kin. Their wrath, their ire, their Mordred was thy rage. Where erst we sought abroad for foes to foil, behold, our fates had sent us foes unsought. Where foreign realms supplanted once supply, O blessed home that hath such boon in store. But let this part of Arthur's prowess lurk, nor let it e'er appear by my report what monstrous mischiefs rage in civil wars. O rather let due tears and wailings want. Let all in silence sink what hence ensued. What best deserveth mention here is this, that Mordred vanquished trusted to his flight, that Arthur eachwhere victor is returned, and lo, where Mordred comes with heavy head, he wields no slender weight, but wields a crown.
And we'll just pause there before we go into that scene. Yeah, the tying up of general narrative. Arthur's been away 9 years. If he only had one more year, he would have been able to get enough stamps to be a full Troy, and did all sorts of things. But the ending of that, tying it in, Mordred vanquished, trust that Arthur, the victor is returned, and lo, where Mordred comes, and you have this really nice charge at the end for Mordred in a moment to enter. And we now know who Mordred is, and so yeah, we've that has a nice payoff to it that I really like. Fate's doing bad things. Thoughts from the room about that, or the dumb show? Lots to say about the dumb show, I'm sure. We all like a dumb show. Nymphs dressed in their who are apparelled accordingly.
Yeah, we've got nymphs instead of furies this time, which is I don't know. It's very cute.
Yeah, I do wonder if the dumb shows are effectively a side unit of, there's someone who, a number of people who just do the dumb show parts. They just, basically they've got their own pans people who are there doing the dance numbers. So that, these furies are, change into nymphs and other people change from the nuns into other things and stuff like that. So, Eric.
I was just wondering why the Irishman signifies revenge and fury. I know that, like, obviously at the time there must have been like sort of rebellions in Ireland against the crown. Maybe not in Elizabeth's time, but definitely before that. I think.
Well, Elizabeth is trying to step some sort of authority. That's an ongoing project, which basically fails miserably and creates all sorts of horrible problems that we're still living through. It is an odd detail, isn't it? And I don't know. Is an Irish jacket and an Irish dagger, are they just simply signifiers of a certain type of thing, or is that to signify that they are supposed to actually be Irish? I mean, I'm not sure what's going on there.
Well, also there's Gawain is like identified as the King of Albany in the show notes. Really want to call him in the dramatis personae, and it's kind of like, well, they have problems with Ireland, but not with Scotland. Ish.
Yeah. Well, he's the herald, so he gets a name check before or a messenger of some description coming up later. Liza.
England was actively colonizing Ireland and kept having to fight wars there, and so it's sort of, to an English playwright, it makes a terrible kind of sense to paint the Irish as barbarians. Whereas the Scots are, in an uneasy way, but they're sort of our allies at this point.
Yes, at this point, they definitely, in an uneasy way, they are. Yes, I think that's an excellent way of putting it. How was that Nuntius speech for you, David?
I loved it. I mean, as a standalone piece, I mean, I think it's one of the highlights of the play, really. I mean, it kind of, there's so much kind of drive to it, and as you said, it takes in a large canvas and whips us on.
It is narratively slightly clearer than the ghost earlier, who tied themselves slightly more in knots. Partly, I think, also because it's just the very beginning of the play, whereas here it's basically just about Arthur and a few others, whereas the other one is trying to explain the entire backstory, which is a tall ask. Maybe they'd also just got into it. Okay, we have one scene, sadly, then the action is going to drag to a terrible screeching halt. But the Nuntius has effectively said that Mordred is coming in with a heavy head. He wields no slender weight that wields a crown. Enter Mordred and Conan.
And hath he won? Be strands and shores possessed, is Mordred foiled? The realm is yet unwon, and Mordred lives, reserved for Arthur's death. Well, 'twas my first conflict, I knew not yet what wars required. But now my sword is fleshed, and taught to gore and bathe in hottest blood. Then think not, Arthur, that the crown is won. Thy first success may rue our next assault. Even at our next encounter, hap when 'twill, I vow by heaven, by earth, by hell, by all, that either thou or I or both shall die.
Naught should be rashly vowed against your sire.
Whose breast is free from rage may soon be advised.
The best redress from rage is to relent,
'Tis better for a king to kill his foes.
so that the subjects also judge them foes.
The subjects must not judge their king's decrees.
The subjects' force is great.
Greater the king's.
The more you may, the more you ought to fear.
He is a fool that feareth what he may.
Not what you may, but what you ought is just.
He that among so many, so unjust, seeks to be just, seeks peril to himself.
A greater peril comes by breach of laws.
The laws do license as the sovereign lists.
Least ought he list, whom laws do license most.
Imperial power abhors to be restrained.
As much do meaner grooms to be compelled.
The fates have heaved and raised my force on high.
The gentler should you press those that are low.
I would be feared.
The cause why subjects hate,
A kingdom's kept by fear.
and lost by hate. He fears as many himself whom many fear.
The timorous subject dares attempt no change.
Why dares not desperate dread?
What? Torture, threats.
Oh, spare! 'Twere safer to be loved.
As safe to be obeyed.
Well's you command but well.
Where rulers dare command but what is well, power is but prayer, commandment but request.
If power be joined with right, men must obey.
My will must go for right.
If they assent,
My sword shall force assent.
no, God's forbid.
What? Shall I stand, whiles Arthur sheds my blood? And must I yield my neck unto the axe? Whom fates constrain, let him forego his bliss. But he that needless yields unto his bane, when he may shun, doth well deserve to lose the good he cannot use. Who would sustain a baser life that may maintain the best? We cannot part the crown. A regal throne is not for two. The scepter fits but one. But whether is the fitter of us two, that must our swords discern, and shortly shall.
How much were you to be renowned more, if casting off these ruinous attempts, you would take care how to supply the loss, which former wars and foreign broils have wrought, how to deserve the people's hearts with peace, with quiet rest and deep desire ease, not to increase the rage that long hath reigned, nor to destroy the realm you seek to rule. Your father reared it up, you pluck it down. You lose your country whiles you win it thus. To make it yours, you strive to make it none. Where kings impose too much, the commons grudge. Goodwill withdraws, assent becomes but slow.
Must I, to gain renown, incur my plague? Or hoping praise, sustain an exile's life? Must I for country's ease disease myself, or for their love despise mine own estate? No. 'Tis my hap that Britain serves my turn, that fear of me doth make the subjects crouch, that what they grudge they do constrained yield. If their assents be slow, my wrath is swift. When favor fails to bend, let fury break. If they be yet to learn, let terror teach. What kings may do, what subjects ought to bear. Then is a kingdom at a wished stay, when whatsoe'er the sovereign wills or nils, men be compelled as well to praise as bear, and subjects' wills enforced against their wills.
But whoso seeks true praise and just renown would rather seek their praising hearts than tongues.
True praise may happen to the basest groom, a forced praise to none but to a prince. I wish that most, that subjects most repine.
But yet, where wars do threaten your estate, there needeth friends to fortify your crown.
Each crown is made of that attractive mold that of itself it draws a full defense.
That is a just and no usurped crown, and better were an exile's life than thus, disloyally to wrong your sire and liege. Think not impious crimes can prosper long. At time they scape, in time they be repaid.
The hugest crimes bring best success to some.
Though some be rare,
Why may not I be rare?
it was their hap.
It is my hope.
But hope may miss where hap doth hurl.
So hap may hit where hope doth aim.
But hap is last and rules the stern.
So hope is first and hoists the sail.
Yet fear, the first and last do seld agree.
Nay, dare! The first and last have many means. Oh, but cease at length, your speech molests me much. My mind is fixed. Give Mordred leave to do what Conan neither can allow nor like.
But lo, an herald sent from Arthur's host. God grants his message may portend our good.
Yes, indeed. Here a herald approaches, but sadly that is all we have time for this session.
No!
We have to pause mid-flow of the act, which is always to say a shame because these acts are mostly self-contained units. And yeah, so battle's gone badly, but Mordred is going more battle and Conan is going less battle. And they go at it for a while there. Conan's got some good arguments. By trying to take this place by force, you will destroy it.
And Mordred is like, no, I like destroying things.
So it is a return to the kind of dialogue we were having earlier with Mordred and Conan. So but in a sort of battle context as a prelude for more other things happening, because we suddenly have a lot more people who will be entering the stage. I say a lot. Interesting questions about precisely how to divvy up who is about to enter the stage in the next session. Thoughts about what we've just done, David?
I mean, I think that the Mordred Conan exchanges are the most interesting things in the play so far. Are beautifully read. Hard to bring off, but I think once one got to know the play better, to be able to to create the consistency between those two scenes, I think you'd get really interesting developments. And when you think that it's being played in front of the Queen as well, with these sort of discussions of good government and tyranny, I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's those shared lines are actually quite tricky because they're quite tight. There's not quite enough room to finish sentences. People are doing these sort of half sentences and snippets, and it's really quite difficult to make those land. There's a lot of rehearsal, I think, to make that really sing. I could see what Rachael meant from before, that the sort of how easily you could actually turn this into comedy, particularly with the quick exchanges. I mean, I almost saw a crown being held and at times, maybe Conan trying it on and then it going back and forth between the two of them before it lands with Mordred. Rachael?
What you were saying, David, I was struggling to formulate and like really say what I think, but like about the last scene, I think the last scene they were in was an outright like screaming match, because that I feel like that's the only time outside of comedy that you really would have that quick pace, because it sounds like they're spitting at each other and they're really going at each other. And I think you have it here again, where this is a real like friendship breakup between them. Because some of Conan's lines where, Conan is going to be his subject and you're not going to care when I'm served you loyally about, reigning over me and everybody else justly, and you're going to push me down like that. I like these. I like these Mordred Conan scenes. I like all of this play so far. I think they're great for actors because you can really just sit there and pronounce the words and have it come out and just form into a full argument or a full whatever they're doing. And also these Mordred Conan scenes, I think they're great at breaking things up because they come after they come after these other, this comes after that Nuntius's speech, which is just him by himself, and there's so much power in that speech, but the dialogues just it just makes it so dynamic in this next scene that speeds it up and throws you into the next scene.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a certain I don't know if I'm trying to think modern parallels to this kind of really fast-paced dialogue. It's it's either Aaron Sorkin or it's Gilmore Girls. I'm not sure which.
I was thinking Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Were you now?
I was now. Stoppard, dude. Tom Stoppard.
Yeah, and anyway.
So I was going to pick up. I think Rachael did a really good job of breaking down that scene. Also, that cat is very cute, and I love the cat very much. What I was gonna say is the shared lines are intimate. When characters finish each other's lines or interrupt each other's lines, these are two people who've been on campaign together. Mordred trusts Conan enough to let him talk back. Conan presumably loves Mordred enough to have served all this time with him. And on stage, I think it would be interesting to see how far Conan's loyalty goes. To say that Conan is opposing Mordred as much as he does because I think he loves him and wants him to be a good king. So the shared lines, how much of it is sword fighting, sort of serve and volley from far away, and how much of it is them grabbing each other's shoulders and going, this, this. That would be a really interesting thing to play with, staging wise, and see what happens to the relationship, because there's this tension here that just pulls back and forth, and the legato is a tension, and then there's staccato bits that are just punctuated by that alliteration, these lines, this verse. I don't think it's a coincidence that I like the writing better in the Mordred Conan scenes than in some of the other scenes. I was getting whiplash a little earlier because there'll be two or three great lines that you're like, holy, and then there'll be a line that just tries to grab the ring and falls off the painted pony at the same time. Why turnst thou mine thy back? So yeah, sorry, I talked a lot.
No, it's absolutely fine, and it's something that actually is quite difficult to achieve on Zoom, because there's always some delay or timing issues in terms of being able to deliver that. You can't quite build up to the Conan just going, "God's forbid," and Mordred just going, breaking that up. There seems to be that there's a moment there that Conan goes perhaps too far. It's really interesting. A lot of the play is Mordred and Conan so far. A lot of what we've done today has been Mordred and Conan.
Conan goes too far, but Mordred also goes too far.
Oh yeah. It's fair, absolutely fair. The percentage of the play that we've read today that is not Mordred is actually quite small. Yeah, it says it took a while to get into the Guenevera stuff, and maybe we're now that we're into it, there's more to dig into that earlier stuff than there was. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. I mean, it's always a question of, with these plays is that we've got a lot of good meat here. What do we want to do with this as we go into final thoughts? What is the potential for this in terms of, do you want to make trims? Do you want to adjust? What do we do with dumb shows? Do you expand dumb shows? What other things might you throw at a text like this? That question of, what does one do with a prologue that is effectively site specific? How much of that is material that can be used or should be used in a performance? We've discussed previously, when you do sort of semi-event theatre and you actually have someone be the queen, and you at least create that context so that can be performed. But is that the way we want to go? There's all sorts of options here. That's the great thing about plays. You can do what you like with them. The authors are dead. So thoughts from the room. I'll start with Eric. Final thoughts.
Yeah, that was weird because we basically gender switched this play, and it was just kind of like, okay, this is sort of Guinevere has to be quieter than like traditionally, like compared to the roles that I've been reading so far, where they're very boisterous or like childish or whatever. She feels very sort of restrained and sort of like an sort of inner process kind of person, whereas you get the men in this play are very sort of like loud and acty and sort of like we're going to go and do this and kill people and do so on and so forth. And whereas I don't know, just that contrast is quite interesting to sort of line up. In my head, I can imagine like one part of the stage being used for Guinevere and her business, and the other part of the stage being for Mordred and Conan, and presumably Arthur when he arrives, if he arrives.
Arthur is coming.
Okay.
Arthur is coming. Worry not.
But yeah, it just feels like you would divide the stage up, or the scenery performance area, or whatever, in that way, so that you can have that sort of contrast.
David, final thoughts. You're muted at present, so wonderful thoughts.
Yeah, I'm loving it so far. I think it's got a lot of strength and a lot of potential in it. I mean, following on slightly from what Eric just said, I mean, it's as Liza said about the intimacy between Conan and Mordred, that there is no intimacy between Mordred and Guenevera. There is that sort of distance which Eric suggests you might present physically. Yeah.
Liza, final thoughts.
Well, I think Guenevera is actively attempting to distance Mordred in that scene, whereas Conan is trying to sort of grab him and steer him in the course he wants him to go. One gets the sense that Guinevera's maids are more yelling at the TV than anything else. But yeah, I mean, this play is more dynamic than I remembered it being. But let's see whether we can sustain that motion. I think, when Arthur comes in, it may well turn into a whole different play.
Yeah, maybe we will rue the day that Arthur returns.
Well, maybe Arthur will rue the day.
Yeah, well, I think, to be fair, no spoilers here, Arthur's going to rue the day.
The day is just generally going to be rude.
Very rude, very rude. Rachael.
Yeah, my final thoughts are keep the dumb shows, keep everything. I love it so far. I love the relationship between Mordred and Conan. I think the relationship between Mordred and Guenevera, I think there's a little more distance there because it's sort of like they have to be. They're not two men. They're a man and a woman, and it's his father's wife, and you know, his father's been away a long time. Maybe it's just that sort of distance, just enough distance to keep them out of gossip. I love it. I love this play. It's great.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to seeing where we're going with this text. It is not you know, it's not a short play, but it's not an excessively long play. But I'm sort of looking at going, well, this could be maybe some nips and tucks here, bit here, highlight this. I'm thinking there's something actually really interesting about Guenevera, the similarity as well as the differences between her scenes with her attendants and sister and the scene with Mordred and Conan and Mordred and Guenevera. I think there's a lot more to be got out of what that character is saying there, and actually how changing it is, and how more demonstrative it is as well. You know, there's a lot to be dug out of that. And that's what I really like about these plays that we've been doing so far. The intercourt plays have had a sort of fruitiness to them, a certain gutsy quality that I'm liking. It's a different kind of quality to some of the other plays we might call gutsy. There's something really interesting going on here that I think can be expanded and played around with. And that snapshot again, these moments, I'm really liking, and how you tie that together with music, with dumb show, with these choruses. I'm really liking the chorus. I usually hate the chorus. I usually find the chorus just turns up and says, okay, we are now 1/5 of the way through the play. You can now reset your watches. Let me tell you something you already know, and moralize in a way that you won't like. But no, I'm really liking the you know, a few really nice bits from them. So okay, that was up to Act 2, Scene 2. We're going to complete Act 2 and Act 3 next session. And then the final session will be in Act 4 to the end of the play. So we will be able to complete acts as we go. All that remains to thank everybody for all their wonderful thoughts. Unless anyone has any final thoughts they're desperate to throw in that they didn't get in. All that remains is to say thank you very much to all the readers, and goodbye.